Hi, everybody. It's really great to be here. I'm going to be your host today. My name is Ruslan. I'm a product marketing manager at Precisely. I'm a huge fan of all things spatial, and a big part of my job is following different trends and developments in the world of location data and analytics. So, my goal today is going to be sharing some of my findings and some of my excitement with you. And whether you're a geospatial expert, business executive, or simply a user of location based applications, it's my priority to make sure that this session is informative for you and you'll come out with some new information. We're also going to have a Q&A session in the end, so please feel free to ask your questions and I'll do my best to answer all the questions in the end. Okay, folks, I think we got that out of the way. Let's jump right in. Today, I want to walk you through some of the key reasons behind the rising need of location intelligence. I always like to start with our definition of location intelligence, as these can vary a lot depending on your background and your understanding and level of appreciation of location intelligence. We're going to then see why enterprises look at LI, location intelligence, as a way to generate business value, and almost as important, why it is happening now and how things have changed in the recent years and how you can adopt. We'll then review some of the key business applications of location intelligence. I have several live demonstrations for you showing how different organizations may choose to onboard location analytics and why. And to wrap up, I'll leave you with some thoughts around what you might need to consider while choosing a solution. Big spoiler alert, data will play a huge role in that decision. So lots to cover today. I'm going to jump right in. Instead of a boring definition of location intelligence that you can read in the Webster dictionary, I'd like to start with the reason why such a set of solutions and practices even came to life. For the longest time, business leaders would rely on data to make better decisions, but it's often lacking context about the places, surroundings, people, and behaviors that impact business activity. In every industry, folks would find that there are questions that they simply cannot answer without an extra layer of competence. So let's say you want to open a new store. That's going to be a huge investment and you cannot afford to make a mistake. But what if you're only relying on the price of the real estate as your only metric? And even then, what if there are potential locations that would be a lesser investment and drive more new business? Those are some things you need to consider, some questions that location intelligence can help answer. Businesses need answers, and most of them would rely on location data to answer some of those questions. The questions like, what are your target demographics and what your competition is going to look like? Is this location in the heart of a tourist destination? And if so, how are your customers going to be commuting to get your goods and services? What is the walkability rating? What's the traffic in those areas? And over several years working at Precisely, I found some of the most unique applications of location intelligence that you can possibly imagine. I mean, from tree marking to parking lot management, there is so much value you can potentially unlock, which is why this is my theorem of sort that we'll see a big rise in adoption of spatial analytics in the next few years. And here's why. Location intelligence, in a nutshell, is simply an organization's capability to make sense of spatial relationships between people, assets, and the environment to derive trends and insights that will inform their decision making. In this example here, someone would look at the branch performance number and not consider the different factors affecting these three locations. But when you layer in, let's say, competition and walkability and other spatial elements that have an influence, it all becomes a clear picture that makes sense. At times, when so much investment is at stake, it is unimaginable that some businesses still refer to countless business intelligence dashboard or Excel spreadsheets to derive this level of information. But I do want to reassure you that this is changing rapidly. And you may ask why. Spatial analytics tools have been on the market for decades before I was even born. As a matter of fact, our own desktop mapping solution, MapInfo Pro, is just cursory. But the first reason why this adoption is going to increase rapidly in the next few years is the boom of data in general, and consequently, the boom of data users. So more technical users will be relying on location data in downstream analytics, and more business users will need to access these insights in their daily operations. Second reason, I believe, is that the availability of tools and how easy it is becoming to use them in your daily operations. Most of the location intelligence technology at its basis have been available and used within specialized departments for years, but we'll be seeing more and more enterprises focusing on location intelligence in the coming years just because how simple it is to use. Companies do want to spend less time on data prep and spatial processing and rely more on location intelligence reports and easy to access tools, which we'll see in action later today. I'm really excited to show you those. Finally, the turbulent times that we've seen in the past few years show that location intelligence is an incredible driver of competitive advantage. In a situation when you're not in a position to make significant investments, location data is an incredible asset if you can harness it, that you can leverage to find new revenue opportunities and optimize your business according to the demands of a tough business climate. We've seen a proof of that in numbers as 83% of all CEOs continue to pursue a more data-driven organization. You'll see that all the applications of location intelligence on the right that you can see, like territory planning or risk underwriting and serviceability, again, whether it's network deployment or fraud analytics, they all rely on high quality and, importantly, high integrity data that is fit for use and has that context required for decision making. There's still many roadblocks, as you can see. 3/4 of CEOs report reliance on accurate location data for decision making, but only half of them would rate their data quality as high or very high. These are tech CEOs. I would also suggest that I'm sure you've experienced that in your daily lives, that people are not usually very happy with the quality of their data. But a lot of the times when people talk about quality, they talk about missing fields in data and not necessarily about the context that the data is missing. So that's, I think, is a gap that location intelligence can definitely fill in. All of the stats that we're looking at right now point that location intelligence can become this driver of data integrity and key to ensuring that you're using most accurate, most consistent, and most contextualized location data across your systems, all while avoiding many costly mistakes along the way. Our customers can enrich their address data and apply spatial analytics to expose new attributes that can provide you insights into associated risks, areas of opportunity, and ways to maximize internal resources, depending on the use case. And across all use cases, from property insights to, let's say, last mile delivery, our capabilities are going to be unmatched in delivering those results because of the approach that Precisely is taken. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first, let's look at some of those examples of different business applications of location intelligence. And as you can see, there is tons. Location intelligence is becoming more and more democratized, and this trend is continuing to evolve. And with the trend is evolving, you'll see that there is going to be more and more applications that could potentially make this live. So risk underwriters, real estate analysts, customer support folks, this is just a few categories of new users that are going to be emerging. And you see the list of business applications is quite massive. So that number is just going to continue to increase. I do, however, want to narrow down our focus today because there's so much to cover. So instead of walking through each use case in detail and talking about it, I would like to instead show you some specific examples of how you might choose to leverage location intelligence in your daily life. So there's 3 things I want to cover today. Today, we're going to look at ad hoc mapping, a more traditional way to using location intelligence in your organization. Then we're going to be looking at location reports. That's going to be the delivery mechanism that I think is going to emerge a lot in the next few years just because of the ease of use. And finally, we're going to be talking about location data management and analytics. And these are going to be our 3 common categories of solutions that we're going to be focusing on today. So with that, let's jump right into the demo of the ad hoc mapping. And for that, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Okay. Everybody can see the screen. Okay. I think we should be good now. If you can see the screen, please let me know in the chat.
We can see the screen. It looks great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Joby. In this example, I'd like to show you how someone could go about selecting a new location for a coffee shop. I picked specifically San Francisco because I just recently found out that San Francisco is in top 5 cities across the states with the prevalence of coffee shops per capita. And how luckily I had the demographics data, our site demographics data that I wanted to demo today. So it was very handy. In this example, we have a site that we currently service, the site and the catchment area that we currently service our customers for the coffee shop. If we're looking to open a new location, one of the things that we want to consider is, are we going to capture the same audience or at least the same demographic build out of the audience that we do right now? And maybe there are some other audiences that we would want to capture instead. So in this example, I want to show you the analytics between the two sites. We're going to select the two sites and we're going to run quick analytics to see how the demographic build out in those two sites compares. And it's a quick operation. One of the things that I want to cover too is while the use of desktop LI might be decreasing, there's a lot more usability that business users can find. As you saw, that was really easy to do. I'm going to just zoom in so everybody can see. So here you can see that the analysis compares the site A and the most prevalent demographic group in the site A to the potential site B. So here we'll see when the downtown professional hustle demographics group, and if you've never seen demographics groups built out before, that's the really cute names that are often used, which I find really adorable. You'll see how this site compares to the new site that we want to explore. And from here, you can make a decision of whether this is a good demographic build out or whether it's missing some key demographics that you're missing. A cool thing about ad hoc mapping is you can always change the criteria of analytics. So in this example, we're looking at catchment areas and we're looking at demographics data. But what if you wanted to layer in the crime risks, let's say? So this is done really easy. You just bring in the crime data and you can run the same site analytics to see how those perform. So some might say that site selection is not the use case for desktop GIS, but I know for a fact, one of my friends, I'm in Charlotte, and one of my friends actually ran those types of analytics to open up those little comic kiosks to comic book sales. So that works pretty well, even though this is not a large location management system that needs to, where you need to drive really advanced analytics. This is still something that you can use. And like I mentioned, the number of use cases is pretty incredible. So we're going to come back to this slide, and I just want to talk a little bit about the different benefits of ad hoc mapping and why you would want to go this way. So one of the key things is the flexibility. I mean, desktop GIS, you can install it on any machine. You can open almost any file format. It's really easy to use. So while a lot of people are saying that desktop JS is kind of sunsetting, I'm a huge believer in desktop, and I think it's going to become more prevalent in the future. It's just going to still become more business friendly, which I see where the trend is going to go. If you feel otherwise, I'll be interested to hear from you. So feel free to pop your opinion in the chat too, and we'll come back to it in the end of the session. So the second thing I wanted to show to you today is the location reports. And to do that, I'm going to go back to the screen share. And there is a big reason why I like the location reports. Is when I first started with location intelligence, this was the one thing that was available to me because it was easy to use. So I could jump right in and start learning. So I'll go ahead and pop in the address. Notice how when I type in the address, I can see the autocomplete filled out. So the data that I'm inputting in is compared against the master location data built into the report. So when I put the address, the report is preset for someone like a risk underwriter who really needs to understand the details about the property features, different risks that the property is exposed to, how, let's say, the address is connected to the parcel, how many buildings are on the parcel, and things like that. So in this report, you'll see that we're looking at the condominium. The address I inputted in is the address of the building. So this building sits on one parcel along with 3 other buildings. It's really important to know that that's a condominium because that may be affecting the decisions you might be making. So here we see that we have a predefined risk index profile. So we see the risk of hail and strong wind and tornadoes. If we wanted to jump in and learn more about a specific risk, that is also available to us as well. It's really easy to fall victim of preconceived notion. Like this address I put in is Florida, and everybody knows how Florida is exposed to hurricanes and different weather conditions. On average, in the Florida is the most expensive state when it comes to insurance, like homeowners insurance. But at the same time, having a more detailed information about the property can help ensure, for example, know for a fact that this specific location hasn't been exposed to certain risks. So I can still underwrite them and I can still provide a policy without losing my mind. In addition to that, in this specific report, and I'm going to try to find it here. Yes. So this specific report allows you to also list all the customers you have with existing policies so that you can see how that policy compares to some of the other policies. And the beautiful thing about this here too is all the risks that you can see also have a definite breakdown of exactly which risks are you exposed. Because a lot of the times when we're talking about crime risk or if we're talking about the wildfire risk, we're only looking at the overall and the aggregated risk. This report exposes you to different elements of that data that can give you a better idea of what exactly the risks that you're going to be exposed when you're providing services at that location. So one important thing I do want to mention here too is this report was built specifically for this use case. I've seen a very similar report built for telecommunications company that want to understand whether the location whether they can service the location, understand the serviceability of a location. So a lot of the times when we think about our addresses and where we are, we're just thinking, well, if the address exists, that means that I can consume services here. But there's a lot of things that you need to consider. For example, how expensive it's going to be to lay out fiber to your specific locations. And that's something that definitely this report can answer. So this is an application of location intelligence people don't really often think about, but something that you can input the data and return a lot of information. So this is something that I think is a great nod to the future of location intelligence and where it's going to be. So some of the benefits, I already covered some of those, but the biggest benefit is the accessibility. So everybody, without any specialized training, without any specialized streams, skill can onboard location intelligence easily. This report was pre-built and predefined. The data that you saw was the data that particular customer decided to onboard. You can change the data and see the data that you want to see. Operational efficiency in the sense that you can input the address and it's going to be pretty error-proof because you're going to be comparing the input to the address that exists in the master location data. And that which means that the address will exist and you're going to be able to get the information that you're looking for. So it's a pretty error-proof location intelligence tool that I'm sure we'll see more and more emergence of. Now, the final example I wanted to chat through quickly here is location data management and analytics. So we did do a quick demo of site selection. I would say most of the time, a heavy lift like site selection for, let's say, a financial services organizations, when you need to understand the different implications of, let's say, cannibalization and closing one location versus opening the new one and how that's going to affect your customer and their access to services, not just the digital services, but also in-person attendance to a bank branch. Some of those things require a lot of data science, a lot of spatial modeling, and a lot of bringing data from different disparate data sources into one place to run analytics on. And in this example, you'll definitely be relying on something like a location data management system where you can pre-configure it how you want to be. You can rank the different size depending on the walkability and how it's going to affect different locations that you already have. So this is definitely an example of location intelligence, and you can think someone like a big fast food chain or a big retail store would definitely need to involve when you have thousands of locations and you're opening a new location every year. This is how you can make sure that when you open a location, it's a huge costly decision, and that's how you make sure that it's not going to be a huge flop. So this definitely is an example of where you would need something more advanced and something more of a heavy lift when it comes to your decision making. All right. These are the 3 examples I wanted to share with you today. But when we talk about all of these examples, obviously these are going to be suited for different personas you might be talking to. If you're a business users, you might want to see a location report and not have to dig into an ad hoc mapping analytics. So let's review some of the common elements though that you still want to get right, regardless of what tool you want on board. So unlike some of our competitors, precisely we always start with data and understand that the accuracy, consistency, and completeness of your location data is going to be a prerequisite for confident decision making. I could tell you that you could build a report that's going to give you all the right information without having your data just right, but I'll be lying. If you're looking to open a new store, you still need to analyze demographic data, foot traffic patterns, and competition around the store, but it all starts with the address. If you're expanding your network coverage, you'll need to have a better view of serviceable locations to plan new build out, but you want to make sure that the analytics you run on are based on high quality and high integrity address data. Well, that said, we have, as you saw, an unmatched set of spatial analytics capabilities for any persona that you can possibly imagine. So we meet the needs of both technical and specialized users and business users across personas. And from desktop users and developers and data scientists to real estate analysts, marketers, and C-suite executives, that is my personal belief. I think that we should be able to bring essential context to all of these persona, all this critical information that just cannot be seen in numerous Excel spreadsheets to the table to their tables, and help their customers make better decisions. One aspect we didn't quite get to talk about today, but I'm sure you've seen some of the elements of that in the location reports demo, is the fact that the value of location intelligence goes way beyond mapping. So the role of location data in the lives of your customers is as important as its role across the systems businesses rely on. When people talk about location intelligence, for some reason, we always think of a map. But what about an operational role of location intelligence in your system? Like making sure that when you're searching for an address, you know exactly that that address exists. What about having that address consistent across all your business system from the customer view when they type in the address to your CRM view, for example? That's why our approach to location intelligence is very twofold, and we try to drive both operational analytical value, in turn bringing accelerated time to value and market response, all while reducing operational costs along the way, because these are some things that are not normally considered in traditional location intelligence communities. So with that, what are some of those elements that you might want to consider? First, I'd like to start with customer data, where it's being stored and captured online, right? That's one of the most important elements because that's where you're going to be building your analytics on. We then need to validate that information and remove all the manual address errors, ensure that the address capture process is streamlined and accurate moving forward. Through geocoding, we first ensure that location accuracy of address data. As you might imagine, address data is not a great candidate for any databases, let alone for running spatial analytics, because addresses change. Sometimes addresses are missing the apartment numbers, sometimes they're just missing fields, cities, zip codes, you name it. Which is why through our geo-addressing process, we assign a Precisely ID, which not only opens a door to our data enrichment portfolio. You've seen some of those examples of, like, let's say, layering in risks data or school boundaries data or whatnot, connecting that and linking those ID to the address ID. But it also ensures that your address data has the location accuracy it requires. So our data portfolio continues to grow, but what additional value that the Precisely ID provides is that you can link our address data with enrichment data from other vendors as well. So depending on the use case that you'll require property data, demographics data, crime and hazard data, you can think of million applications from risk assessment use case we looked at today to emergency response. All of them are heavily reliant on third-party data that you might need to consider as well. And lastly, you've already seen some of the spatial analytics tools from Precisely in action today. This was obviously just a small peek because we haven't talked about all the different ways you can bring location intelligence directly to your applications with APIs and SDKs, which is probably a topic for a whole nother session. But regardless of the solutions you'll choose to implement, one important thought I want to leave you with is this. All research suggests that your competitors are already making location data work for them, and location intelligence is going to continue to be unmatched in its ability to bring the most relevant, most accurate, and most actionable information to those who need it, be it business users, technical users, or your customer. So now is the time for you to act. Thank you for listening. I'm really excited to see what questions we have coming in.
Great, thank you so much. It's now time to move into our Q&A session. As a reminder, if you have not already done so, to ask questions, please use the Q&A box and hit send to submit your questions. We do already have some great questions here to get started with. Our first question, how does a business know where to start when it comes to location intelligence?
That's a great question. I think that we live in the world now where everybody's hyper-focused on making sure the data quality is right, even though nobody really knows what to do with it and how to achieve data quality in your organization. So location intelligence, a lot of the times, it just goes unseen and goes very unappreciated. I would say you need to consider location intelligence in your organization if your business is location driven. And that could be a delivery service. That could be direct marketing to different customers where you need to understand who you want to market to, how much investment you're going to require. So when you're working with data that has a location component, I think that you're missing out on the different insight that the data can provide to you if you're not losing location intelligence. Location intelligence is probably the most cost-effective tool you can imagine. You can employ location intelligence before a lot of other things that you need to consider in your organization and kind of how you treat data. So I would say definitely start using location intelligence if your business is location driven, and definitely consider it if you are currently figuring out your data management system, for example, because you need to make sure that those are going to be preset for location intelligence later on if you decide to onboard them later.
Next question, can I choose what data I want to see on the location report?
Absolutely, yeah, you can definitely. So the location report I showed today, I think it had mostly boundaries, parcels, buildings, data, so the property related data. This doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So a lot of the times those location reports rely on your first party data, so you can have some of the information that you want to already see on the report. So let's say you're running like a sales organization and you want to see how different territories are performing and what is the contribution of individual AE in those territories. So we're going to need their names, we're going to need, what areas they're servicing, but ultimately that first party data is going to be the driver of the report that you might want to create. Another thing too is the reports that we've seen, they were very map-based reports. They don't have to be map-based reports. So you can still derive information from location data and provide an output without necessarily providing it on a map, right? You can just say, walkability score in this area is 5 out of 5 or 4.5 out of 5. It doesn't have to be this map-based environment. Another thing too, I think is important to consider is that your requirements for a report might change over time. So you might want to bring additional data later on. So it's always cool to start with a report that serves your business needs right now, but also great to have an option to enrich it further on.
Our next question, I have a different data vendor. Can I still use your reporting?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I would say definitely yes, and not just the data vendor. So if you have a different API vendor and you want to, let's say, deliver mapping into our report using an API from a different vendor, we've done that many times. That's a custom implementation, but it's still very, very, very easy for us to do. Absolutely, like I said, not all the data that you've seen today is the only data you can use. A lot of the times you can use your own data, you can bring third-party data. We understand the importance of having the report and the data that is fit for you, so that's not going to be an issue if you work with Precisely.
Another question. How does Precisely ensure their location data accuracy?
Sure. Good question. So I kind of covered it a little bit in my presentation, but the geo-addressing process that we employed Precisely includes geocoding, which is assigning latitude and longitude to an address data set so that X and Y, they will remain consistent regardless of whether the address changes in the future or whether your address is incomplete. We have a great geocoding at the street level, at the building level, at the address level. Another part of the geo-addressing process is address verification. So when you have all these addresses, like I said, addresses have missing fields, have missing apartment numbers. So during that process, you can make sure that the ID that you assign is associated with the correct address that is complete. And finally, you've seen it in action today with the location report is address autocomplete. So just the ability to add a capability to your systems, to your internal systems, or systems that the customers access, basically any operational system where you input the address, it compares the address to the master location data, making sure that the address exists, and you can continue running analytics on it. So that's how we at Precisely ensure location data accuracy. And that's one of the things I really consider a part of location intelligence, because location intelligence is not just the tools that you bring in, it's your ability to get the most out of your location data. So having location data be accurate, having location data providing the context that you need is what I think is a prerequisite to location intelligence.
Thank you. Our next and final question is, how does or what challenges can be had when trying to combine existing reporting with Precisely data?
Okay, that's a good question. So challenges when you combine existing reporting with Precisely data. So I mean, you can clarify in the chat, but I would imagine this means you have some existing business tool like a Tableau dashboard report that you want to include enrichment data to it. That shouldn't be an issue. If we're talking about the existing reporting that we presented here today, the most important part is being able to enrich the address data that you have with additional attribution. So if that is your goal, the ID system that we employ Precisely, but the Precisely ID kind of solves that issue by itself, because all of our address data provides an ID, a unique and persistent ID that you can join different data sets and enrich your data that will appear in the report. So the process of combining existing reporting with Precisely data becomes really easy. Just in general, though, I will say that that's the biggest issues that businesses see with building a report, right? Is to bring in all the different data together, because in a perfect world, all data will just line up and you'll have a beautiful visualization that people across your organization can access. Unfortunately, in the reality, that's not how it works. A lot of the times you're going to have empty fields. A lot of the times you're going to have just mismatched data that doesn't really provide you any value. But the investment's already been done. You've already spent time working and wrangling it with the data. That's why it's so important to make sure that when you decide to onboard location intelligence, you have a trusted provider that you're walking with.
Great. Well, that does look like it was our final question for the session. Ruslan, do you have anything else that you want to add before we close out today's session?
Sure. I just want to thank everybody for coming in, joining in, and thank you for all the questions. I've seen some activity in the chat, so appreciate you joining. If you have any further questions, feel free to either message me directly on LinkedIn or go to precisely.com and request a demo. We're happy to help you on your journey with location intelligence. And again, great to be here, and thank you, Jovi, for being a great host.
Great. So that is all the time we have for today's program. If you were not able to ask your question, or if you have any additional questions, please email them to info@geoleap.com. I just have a few quick housekeeping notes to go over before we officially close out. If you could please fill out the short evaluation form that will appear once you close the webinar. This will help us better serve your needs in future webinars. As a reminder, the on-demand materials will be emailed to everyone within 2 business days. This will include a PDF of the slides as well as a link to the recording of today's presentation. Thank you again to Ruslan for a great presentation today, and thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. This webinar was brought to you by GeoLeap News and sponsored by Precisely. Thank you all and have a great day.